Hey everyone, welcome back to Secure AF Podcast. I'm your host today, Donovan Farrow, CEO of Alias. Thank you so much for being here. We have a very special episode this afternoon or today, whenever you're watching it online. We've had a lot of breaches and incidents happen for incident response. We've talked a lot about that historically in podcasts. We've kind of walked through on how to handle that, how it works for the public, all the things you need to have to kind of assess those situations. But locally in Oklahoma, we had a company that has made it to the news, and allegedly they have had a large breach. And we had an awesome guest, a good buddy of mine, known him for forever, really, Mr. Chris Yates. He's going to be here. So he's going to talk about that today. We're going to kind of discover what exactly we're talking about, topic, and if you could introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, thanks for those kind words, Donovan. Chris Yates here. I've been in IT and InfoSec in Oklahoma City since the early 90s. I won't date myself too much.
OG.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, a lot of gray in this beard and not much hair on the top of my head. But I currently work for a company that's based in Plano, Texas, Cybersecurity. I'm the director of network security services there. But I kind of think the interesting here is I worked in information security for Integris Health for a few years and still have a lot of folks in my circle, professional circle and social circle that worked there previously, and still some that still do work there. So this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because I was not only a former employee and an Oklahoman, but I'm a patient of Integris Health, and my data was caught up in this alleged recent breach. And we can talk a little bit about the details of that email here in a little bit, and I'll kind of share with you what I know and what kind of scared me and kind of spurred me to action to kind of start to get some news out there and really to hopefully be a resource so that people can kind of know what to do. Because I've got a lot of folks that are asking me like, okay, this email said to do this, but what should we actually do? And I'm like, oh, let's talk about that.
So there's a whole mantra we're going to go through. So first of all, Chris, thanks for coming on. Again, OG back in the day, known him for a long time, but I just like his whole career going back to when he started in InfoSec. I called it InfoSec because that's what it used to be called.
I know, right?
InfoSec, moving to cybersecurity.
We were InfoSec before security was cool, dude.
Exactly. We were the network engineers that knew too much.
Yeah.
But so kind of as we go through that, just for the audience and for myself, I know a little bit, but can you give us, let's start like kind of who you are, kind of where you started, like what did you work through? Let's get your skill set out there. Let the public know, like as you're coming as an expert, because we, again, appreciate you coming on the show. Where you come from? What did you?
So I come from Arkansas. If you can't tell by the accent,
fair enough.
I grew up in small town Arkansas, northwest and northeast Arkansas. But I came to Oklahoma, Southern Nazarene University, to get a computer science degree in 1989. Graduated in 1994, and started working. I worked at Tinker Air Force Base for 18 years.
Yeah, nice.
Networks and network security for B1 Sustaining Engineering Group, avionics engineers, and then B2 Sustaining Engineering, and then I worked for the Defense Information Systems Agency for 8 years from 2002 to 2010. And then when I left,
not trying to see. I'm just going to keep just prodding you here, so you don't have to give too much details. But what did you do? Like, what was your physical operation days like?
Yeah, I grew up as a network guy, so that was really my skill set is really in networking. So I deployed. Oh, good old, remember FDDI? Yeah, that stuff back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Deployed the first we didn't call them next-gen firewalls.
Right.
They were first checkpoint.
Marketing hasn't picked it up yet.
Yeah, I know, right? They were first checkpoint firewalls that had started to think about things like next generation.
Yeah.
Like, instead of just being simple layer 3, layer 4 firewalls.
They were ahead of their time back then.
Oh, yeah.
Checkpoint
So this was back when Checkpoint was running on a Solaris box. So you had to have a Solaris hardened Solaris box. You run Checkpoint, which was just guest software on the OS.
There you go.
And then they also had a variant that ran on Windows machines, but we didn't like Windows. We still are not super fans.
Fair enough.
But that's kind of the stuff that I did. Back before network security was a separate discipline. If you worked for the DoD, you did network security. If you were a network guy, I mean that's just part and parcel of what you did.
Makes sense.
And then my last probably 4 years working for DISA was deploying secure DMZ networks. So we took kind of legacy systems that weren't segmented, that weren't segregated, and we kind of implemented 3-tier architectures for like web, app, and database security, and segregated the networks and put them in, put the different security classification systems into different zones and did all of that sort of stuff. So it's kind of your standard attack, slice, dice, segregate, move all that stuff.
Especially back then, man. That was kind of the
That's what you did.
we're getting up new technology with the DoD stuff, just kind of elevating to that next level, actually connection through and across the United States and I guess internationally.
I think it's very interesting, Donovan, because one of the things, I continue to tell people today, right, and we'll talk a little bit more, I'll tell you a little bit more about what I've done, but if you look back, this was in, 1990, this is in the early 2000s, like 2002 to 2008 was when I was doing like segmentation for the DoD. I mean, like, that was a part and parcel of what we did to secure systems, right, is make sure that things were segmented.
So we didn't do a flat network? That doesn't work? Or
No. No.
Praise Jesus for segmented networks. Go on.
But I cannot, and I won't name any names here, but you can't imagine the amount of clients that I go to as a network security evangelist, which is kind of my self-imposed title, that we still have networks that are flat. Like I go to customers and they're like, well, we got firewalls. And I was like, are you segmented? Can your workstations connect directly to your servers that are sitting in your data center? Well, yeah. How else would you do it? I'm like, well, no, listen to what we've been preaching for 30 years.
Listen, back in 2001, there was a network segmentation class I took, and we could start working on that, building that. So,
I mean, that's why I say folks talk about like the stuff that John Kindervall has talked about from a zero trust perspective.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, zero trust is kind of the hot thing, but I did a talk 3 years ago. It was like, zero trust is bullshit.
Yeah, well,
because it's become such a marketing term, but it's like the basic stuff that we've been preaching for 20, 30 years.
I feel like that's digital transformation. I had to do my focus hands on that. Also, marketing got a hold of that one. But even, on the network security side, is like, we're still talking about patching, man. I get it, zero trust, but like we don't even have a scanner to scan to get vulnerabilities. So, no, so that's cool. So we can kind of speed up. So you had a lot of great success with other companies before you became full consultant. If you don't mind, give us the ride for that.
Yeah, so I worked when I jumped out of the DoD in 2010, I worked for OGE. There was they took on some funding to deploy smart grid for the entirety of Oklahoma, right, for every customer. So if you got a smart meter on the side of your house
and you have a headache, sorry, that's all right. Go ahead. So I've been told. Go ahead. Allegedly.
Allegedly. I kind of helped do the network security architecture around that stuff as we deployed.
Wow, what a big project! Because it's like what 50% of Oklahoma.
Oh,
state?
more than
that. Okay,
so 600,000 customers, right, was the goal that we were trying to hit.
Jeez.
And so there was some Obama era AARA funding that kind of funded most of that smart grid implementation for OGE.
Yeah, and again, in my small vision into that, knew a person that worked there because they were meter readers, and just the fact that to go in and to change every meter, like a meter in your house. Imagine that whole project.
Oh yeah.
My God, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And securing that was a big deal because you're used to something that's kind of a manual analog sort of device.
Yeah.
And to put it into a digital device that now can potentially communicate with a thermostat in your home.
Right.
And control some stuff in your home, like your temperature and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It really was a big deal.
Yeah.
And it changed the way that OGE did business. And they had some really good goals in mind. I mean, they wanted to kind of reduce peak electricity usage, right? So that they could not have to deploy so many plants. And there's some green stuff around that as well. So I think the goals were noble. Yeah. I think we did a pretty good job deploying it. I mean, I'm a smart grid customer today, and I'm pretty happy with the service I get from it. So.
Well, that is good. I will never have anyone have access to that, but I appreciate your allegiance to that. I'm like, a Nest? No, I'm good.
Yeah.
I just need I don't even need the new Honeywell. I just need like the slider. Yeah, the slider. But but it does. It makes everything more efficient.
Sure.
And I know they're really regulated by the city, so they're not so they are a for-profit company, but they can't, like in Texas where they can just like compete in rates. That doesn't work like that. So in Oklahoma, they have to ask for permission to raise that. Okay. Yeah. So it makes sense. I mean, the state would come back and say, well, what are you doing to actually save for us? Because all we're doing is we're just increasing prices every year. What are you doing to fix that? I think
return on that investment.
I feel like that was their answer.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I worked there for nearly 2 years doing on that specific project. Then I left to work for Integris.
Nice.
I started working for Integris in 2012, worked there until 2016 when I kind of moved over to a small company called Critical Start. And that's kind of where I've been since. I took a little bit of an errant vacation that I'd like to say, working for another consulting company. But
errant vacation. Yeah. I like that. Allegedly.
I came back. I mean, we kind of spun off the VAR side and the services side of Critical Start to become Cyber One about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And when they asked me to come back, I've been back now for 4 months.
Yeah.
It's been great. But also things that one of the reasons I came back was to really start more working with Oklahoma folks.
Yeah.
These are my people. That I care deeply about this. I'm still from Arkansas. That's what I tell folks, but I've lived here for 30 years.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like you've been here forever. Yeah. Even back in the day, I think I saw you at every event, even back when Lars, if he's still not dead out there somewhere, you know, I don't, the 2,600 boys, there's a bunch of them out there. All of them. So,
yeah, I remember passing around a bottle of moonshine.
Yeah.
One of the folks.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Well,
moonshine.
Okay. Yes. Not official anything. It was spirits of some sort in a mason jar.
Yeah, but it's great, like to see like how everyone's grown, and again, obviously to have you like here in the community, like we'll let everyone know, like in the Oklahoma, we have a very, very strong community. I feel like a lot of people give back, and it's kind of cool, and I appreciate everything you've done for the community. And I know you're coming on today because you feel like there's a need, there's a public service announcement that you feel obligated to give to the audience, which they I mean, maybe a little frightened, maybe very confused about it. And I'd say, first of all, appreciate you coming on to do that, because it means a lot to us and the community. So let's just, now we got you, who you are, qualified you. Let's dig in. Let's talk about what happened.
Well, I could tell you, so what I started kind of hearing some rumors. I know a lot of people in the business. A lot of the folks that I worked with in InfoSec at Integris are now working for other VARs, or they're working for manufacturers, vendors, OEMs, whatnot.
Yeah.
Kind of started hearing, going to lunch with folks who are like, something's going on. Like, people are being really weird and tight. I mean, you kind of know. There's lingo. There's a thing that happens when you go and have a meeting with somebody, and by the thing that they aren't talking about, the thing that they can't talk about or won't talk about, or will get in trouble if they did talk about.
Yep.
And so I started to hear some of those conversations, started to point me to something going on. And if you're in our community, you know who to ask about things, right? And so you go to some of those resources, and some of those resources for me started confirming, like, yeah, there's something going on. We're not sure what, but there is something going on for sure, because everybody's being awfully quiet.
Yeah, and it's a small world. I wouldn't say in Oklahoma, but in the cybersecurity community, I would say even in the Midwest. So, again, I would even just step out and say, if something's going on, you should probably reach out and focus in on that to help have other people help, because there's so many resources here.
Yeah.
And again, we don't have to say anything about anyone or anything.
Right.
I think we can help you out. I guess we're consultants. We get paid for that. But also we do care. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And that's part of it. Some of that was starting to trigger in my mind was like, okay, we've got a large Oklahoma company that might be having something go on. My first thought was, how can I help? Because, I work for a company that provides some of those services.
Yep.
I deployed a lot of the firewalls and security tools that Integris used, back in my tenure there.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff hasn't changed much, right? The infrastructure doesn't change that much over 5 or 6 years. So, I left in 2016. So it's only been 7 years.
Yeah, not that long at all.
And so what really kind of set my pants on fire, if I can use a terrible metaphor.
No, I know, I love it. No,
it's like, and really said I need to do something, was I got an email right before Christmas that claimed to have come from the threat actors that had exfiltrated data from Integris, and the kind of the tone of the note was, we got all this data from Integris. You were one of them.
Okay. Here's
what we got of you. And I was like, oh shit, that's spot on. It had my date of birth, my social security number, several phone numbers back that I had, my address, and of course they had my email. So all that information isn't something that you can just generally get.
Right.
I started to be like, oh, this looks legit. And
piqued your interest for sure.
Yeah. So I again reached out to some other resources and started getting some confirmation at a deeper level that something was legitimately going on.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, we need to start to get something out there. And by about that time, I started getting floods of emails from folks. It was around the holidays. So
yeah.
A little bit of
Merry Christmas, by the way.
Right. Yes.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Not a gift card, but
well, they probably would take a gift card.
They would take it. The green card specific. Green card specific. The green spot was that called to go to Walmart. But absolutely.
It was an interesting technique, right? Because folks who do stuff like that, they typically will do like ransomware for healthcare organizations, educational. That's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
That's how you get money. That's how you make money off this stuff. Well, they kind of said, well, we're going to publish this data on January 5th. If you send us $50 in Bitcoin, we will exclude your data from that transmission and, save you from all the craziness. But then they required that you get on their store online, which is on, required the Tor browser.
Yeah.
Which is really just something that would be great for any general consumer like my mom to use, right? I'm like, no, I'm not even going to do that. I know people that do that. That's not something I want to get into, but I certainly wouldn't want any of my family and friends installing the Tor browser and starting to play in that space.
So I can tell you just from my small experience with it is that it has some really good instructions. It has a great account creation. The search feature's amazing.
Yeah.
And it works a little slower because it is Tor, but it is pretty terrifying. Just going through like,
dark.
Yeah.
They call it the dark web for a reason, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's fucking dark.
Yeah. And again, I mean, a lot of people say I would say, why is this one special for me? And I'll let you continue is that, obviously I've been exposed. My kids have been exposed. A lot of people, and even I know their children. And again, me, sure, whatever. I'm an adult. I can always adjust and freeze. I am really concerned about the kids.
I think kids and then the elderly are as a target group, right? Because they don't have usually don't have the necessary technical capacity because they're asking for payment in Bitcoin as well, right? So this is time you just plop a credit card down, right, and do this.
Yeah.
So I don't want anybody at my church that's asking me about this, which most of the folks who have asked me about this are elderly, or it's affected their kids.
Yeah.
But, I know I've had credit monitoring for forever. My data was caught up in the Target breach. It was caught up in the Home Depot breach.
Yeah.
There's probably 3 or 4 other breaches I've been a part of, T-Mobile, all those over the last probably 10 years. So I kind of know what to do in response to that. I know how to freeze my credit.
Yep.
I know how to put fraud alerts on. I know how to, to take care of all of that stuff. And I've had 2 or 3 different credit monitoring services for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So I feel pretty safe.
Yep.
At least from like knowing if something bad is going to go on. But what do we do about our kids?
Yep.
And what do we do about those folks who don't have the technical capacity, regardless or not of whether they're elderly? But certainly for the elderly, they're coming to me asking like, my retirement savings is at risk here. If something really bad happens here, and like I have some medical fraud, and I have to pay a bunch of money to clean up my credit record or to clean up from identity theft, what do I do? I don't want somebody to have to pay $10,000 to get that stuff cleaned up.
Yeah, getting clean. It's a pain, and it could take forever.
So I think that's really, for me, a big thing that was like, okay, that's great that you're providing, to the bad guys, cool that you've provided me a way to exclude my data. Now, number one, do I really trust them to exclude my data? No damn way.
Right.
My data is already out there.
Yeah.
This data has been published already. There's every indication. You can find tools to go out and look for it. The threat actors have already published this data. It's already out there.
So well said. And then before we get down towards the end as a fix, but like, what do you know, again, about the alleged breach? Do you know any of that you can disclose to the public? Maybe something you've read online, because there's been a ton of news about it. What do you know, potentially? Go ahead.
What I can say safely is if you were an Integris patient anytime in the last 10 years, your data is probably out there or is going to be out there very soon.
Yeah.
So the posture you take at this point is make that assumption, I think. I think it's safe to make the assumption that your data is going to be included in this breach. Whether you take those measures that the threat actors gave, where you download the Tor browser, get some Bitcoin, pay that, because it's actually a really interesting technique, like to go after the individuals in a breach like this. It's not commonly done, right? Where you reach out, okay, we've stolen 2 million records. Let's just go to the individuals and see if we can pump them for some money rather than get the organization that was supposed to be in custody of that data, right, to pay the information to keep from it getting from out in the news and from getting published, right? Because ultimately, if you're Integris, what you don't want to happen is the reputational badness that comes as a result of something like this. And then you have to pay for credit monitoring for folks.
Yep.
You have to pay for advertising in the local newspaper, all that sort of stuff. What you would like to be able to do, and this is kind of what the threat actors typically do, is like, give us the money and we'll turn the data back over to you and nothing happens.
It's all hush hush.
So, and organizations love for that to happen because then they don't lose anything. But we're beyond that at this point with this particular event.
Yeah, so again, I don't know the details, but I think for it to get to this point has been, I mean, there had to have been some acknowledgement, or they weren't for sure, or maybe not having data to confirm or not confirm data exfil. So that's my 2 cents on that. I don't have any, you may not have any words on that, but
I don't really have anything to talk about in that regard. But I think, again, I think safely say, if you've been a patient, your data is out there or will be out there very soon. So take preventative measures.
Yeah, and for companies, like if you do have a potential breach or incident, don't ignore it. Not saying it happened in this case. I've worked with many other clients that decide to just put their head in the dirt as an ostrich and be like, it's fine. It's not fine. It's not fine because
those companies are still in business that did that?
1 out of 4.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
True. 1 out of 4. They got sued to death.
Word of the wise.
Yeah, they got sued to death afterwards, which is true. And one thing I was going to say is, which is, again, pardon my moving over here in my technology world, it's actually pretty exciting to see another new mantra of criminal activity, because now they've moved it again. We talked about initially back in the day, hackers come in, they're going to send a network admin and say, hey, I got access to your whatever, firewall, ASA, whatever, doesn't matter. We're going to take down your company unless you pay us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Then we went to, hey, we've stole your data. Now what? And then, sorry, ransomware your data. It's encrypted. And people are like, well, I'm going to go for a backup. Okay, now I've stole your data.
Find the backup.
Yeah, right. If they're not corrupt, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And then they go to, we're going to steal your data, then encrypt it. You can buy it back because by the way, I also deleted your VM backups, LOL.
Yeah.
Oops. And then they went from that to, we stole your data, you didn't pay us, and these are pretty vicious. We're going to send an email kind of list to all of your vendors, all your customers, all your employees, and we're going to call them on the phone to say that these people aren't confessing up to a breach. And now the new one, which is the Integris one, alleged breach, they are going after customers in a HIPAA environment, which I feel like there could be legislation change.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of interesting to see what happens after this, because, I think we have some compliance things that Integris has to do, right? And they're in the middle of doing that, right? You can see, you can kind of tell if you go to their webpage and you look at the cyber event page. If you just do a Google search for Integris cyber event, it leads you to their page that talks about kind of like their public response, which is very legally crafted, right? I mean, because it has to be.
Yeah, it has to be.
And because they're not going to admit to anything publicly that they don't have to, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to say that that's just how it's done, right? You don't do that. So once you figure out then what your legal obligation is to do, it seems like probably the next steps will be, and this is a guess on my part, but I would guess that they're going to have to come out a little more publicly about what happened, give some more details and say, yes, data was taken. And then they'll have to pay for credit protection for anybody that was affected for a year. That's generally what those compliance frameworks indicate. Yep. They haven't done that yet. So, I mean, for me, this is just kind of, I understand that timing sucked around the holidays. Now, it was probably purposeful.
Because it was the 24th, wasn't it? I feel
like the part of the threat actors.
Okay.
Who's got a fully staffed security team over the holidays, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that, I mean, it needs to be a little, in my opinion, a little more timely. Like, if the data is getting published on January 5th and you're going to have to pay for credit protection, I would really like for that to be available to my mom. Yeah. Long before January 5th, when that is potentially going to be exposed, right? So that she can get herself protected, so that she can understand, and get notifications if her data is being used, if it has been stolen. So, I mean, I use her as an example, but she's a prime example because she has no capacity to deal with this.
Absolutely.
She calls me. What do we? Like, well, here's what you do. No.
Here's the not so good options, but options.
And one of the ones that I would have to tell her is like, listen, you're gonna have to pay for a service from Credit Karma or Experian or any one of the credit monitoring agencies that provide such a service. She's gonna have to pay for it if she wants to get it ahead of the game and be a little more proactive rather than reactive. Yeah. Because to tell somebody at this point to wait until Integris offers that to you for free, is probably not the best advice.
Probably shouldn't wait. Yeah. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, the idea that I feel like it's kind of a new attack technique. We'll see how it goes. I feel like there might be some legislation. I don't know if the government's going to enforce, but typically when it comes like this, historically, maybe not for this occasion, they make them publish like the forensic details. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to happen. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't. I know those details exist. Okay. I've seen some of that evidence. Yeah. Can't talk about it, can't provide any details, but I've seen enough to know that there is enough data out there that there's probably something that could be published if they were forced to do so, but they will probably have to be forced to do that.
Could you tell us if it was a 0 day?
Don't know. Not that I can't say. I don't. Okay. I don't even know.
I was like, is there something?
I don't know what the brief. I don't know what the initial attack vector was. Yeah. But I mean, it follows standard pattern, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you pop something, you start looking around.
Yeah.
Standard TTP for something like this.
Yeah, and I find this one obviously even more exceptional in the situation of it is that even Conti, like we're not gonna, they're kind of don't really exist kind of ish a little bit anymore. Like, we're not gonna do medical stuff. We're not gonna do that. And then they like hit Saudi Arabia, Prince Saudi Arabia, and they apologized on their knees, which was kind of funny. But like, they didn't. There was no hesitation. I feel like there was no pullback. There wasn't like, I don't know. And maybe I don't have the full story on that. It's just weird that they would actually go after a medical facility. I kind of out of the loop. Because I feel like the attacker group hit another hospital. Was it out of Kansas?
I saw a type. The TTPs were analysts, so that's one of the things I do know is like some of the folks that were doing threat analysis on the back end using some of those tools were looking at the TTPs and even the email structure look very similar to an attack that happened to another healthcare organization.
Okay, kind of around the same month or 2 months ago. Okay, yeah. And do we know the attacker's name? And
okay, no, then nobody has come out fessing up to doing it.
Yeah, but isn't that again? That's why I think this thing is so interesting, and I feel like it's weird that no one's like wearing their badge of honor, like hacksaw. Yeah, like it's just kind of weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah.
Do you think like maybe the landscape is changing? Do you think, I don't know, for me maybe it's going to more, I would say, private citizens as opposed to a gang?
I don't know. I mean there could be. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd be willing to comment on any of this. I got thoughts, but probably nothing I can comment on. And
again, just all speculation here. And again, just speaking on the specialty of this attack, it's something new I haven't seen before. I usually get noise about it before this happens. We don't usually have this specific Integris alleged breach happen, but also it's like a hey, not only we have these guys, but we have these guys to go and create its own Tor database for the specific breach on this without having any other client breaches.
Interesting monetization scheme, right? How they can make money on it. I do agree. This is brand new.
Yeah.
Going after the end user / patient / whoever's data you took is unique, and it probably will prove to be lucrative.
Yep.
Because they gave very explicit instructions. Here's our store address. Here's how you go get Bitcoin. Here's how you install the Tor browser. They were very helpful to give end users the mechanisms to get their data excluded. Now, it remains yet to be seen if they do. I mean, I tell you what would be just absolutely game changing is they said, hey, I paid to get my data excluded. They actually excluded it. So if you think about that, like long term, what does that mean? Like, okay, so I could pay $50.
Yeah,
that's cheaper than paying for credit protection.
That's what I was about to say. Exactly.
So where's the risk reward in all this, right? Don't turn that on, or do please.
Yeah,
but don't ever get it from me. Don't pay for credit protection. Do it now if you can afford it. Pay for it. Wait for Integris to get it to you for free, whatever.
Yeah,
but get some credit protection. Put a freeze on your accounts. But it's
$50
monetization. $50 is cheap enough, right, to make it like. Okay, I'd pay $50 to make sure it didn't get published.
And as a security person for a long time, forensic investigator, I mean, it ain't bad to protect my kid's future. So, but credit protection, 100%. And I did go back and see that people did pay, like, because it'll say like how many purchases it has, but it's still there. So I'm okay, well, if someone purchased it, like it should be gone.
Right.
That would be my thought. So maybe, but I don't know, man. If someone bought it. If I bought mine and it disappeared, I might be like, I don't know, man.
Maybe it works.
I don't know, but
I don't really know what to do with that at this point, right? It's like,
I love the pick.
This is like the guys coming around with baseball bats. Your storefront, right? If you're in, you're in the big city, and you're like, well, pay your protection money, and we'll take care of you.
Or you can pay double and have someone outside with a baseball bat protect you against the baseball bat people.
Right.
Oh man, that's why I'm pardon the world in this specific, but it is kind of exciting. It's a new challenge, and someone asked me, Donovan, when are we actually going to win the battle against cybersecurity attackers, hackers, all that stuff? And I'm like,
just keep fighting.
Whenever crime doesn't pay, whenever we don't need police for the rest of our lives, and that's it. Yeah, it's not going to happen. New technique. very crazy, especially being here at home. I know they have other districts other across the United States, but specifically here.
Well, you know what I think is just the really, really interesting thing is everybody that's talked to me was like, well, what do you do to keep this from happening to you? And I was like, my data was in this.
Yes.
Isn't that a damn thing I could have done to keep this from happening? This was somebody else's job to protect my data.
It's always getting owned by the third parties.
I know, right?
Every time. No one's stolen from me.
Which is why I do as little. I mean, I get it. We're a digital economy.
Yeah.
We run online, right?
Yeah.
But any way you can minimize the profile of sharing sensitive data about yourself with anybody to protect, like I don't even like to let the utility company keep my credit card data for future payments. I type that in every time because I don't trust those because this sort of stuff happens.
Yep.
Organizations, I mean, we say we paint them with some interesting brushes when stuff like this happens, but this happens.
Yeah.
It is always going to happen because organizations can never spend enough money to protect fully against stuff like this happening eventually.
Yeah. And a lot of those
cycles happen. Something like this happens. Integris will eventually get more budget. They will spend more money on security tools for the next few years.
Yep.
And then we'll see a decline in it because they're like, why are we spending all this money on cybersecurity stuff?
Yep.
So the board will come in and say, we're spending a lot of money on security. We're like, yeah, you remember that thing that happened 5 years ago where it cost us all this money and brand reputation stuff? And they're like, it's not wasn't on my.
Did we ever pipeline exploitation? Oh my gosh, oil and gas. Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we need to start sealing everything. And it's like, I don't know, it's kind of a while ago.
Yeah. And I mean, and it's an inevitable cycle, and that's not just Integris. It's
a human thing.
They spend money on cybersecurity technology, and they spend a good amount of money. They mature their program, and then somebody starts questioning the amount of money you spend on this stuff, and it declines over time. Something else happens, and it's kind of this up and down roller coaster cycle of cybersecurity maturity. And unfortunately, it seems inevitable.
Yeah,
I think it's just the way that works.
And a kind of an inside baseball, like the public may not be aware of, is that they don't have the same employees there. The average time for an IT person, when you're talking security, stay at a company is a year and 7 months because they rotate. And to have those old projects may not be moved quick enough, or they couldn't find a resource after someone left, and that just gets all bundled into the whole system of messy. So it's a wild.
Folks are saddled with a huge amount of technical debt on just the IT side, much less on the cybersecurity side.
Yep.
And yeah, you're right. I mean, most of the folks that were on the team when I was there don't work there anymore.
Yep.
And that doesn't say anything necessarily negative about the folks that work there now. It's just there's things that when you implement that stuff and reasons why it got put in place that get lost in the shuffle when budgets get cut and people start moving around. So,
yeah, crazy world. So I guess kind of coming from the top to kind of readdress maybe we could just do like a short piece of it. What do you recommend the public do? I know we kind of talked about it just directly in a few key points from this conversation.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. Integris did a pretty good job of publishing the numbers on the websites for the three major credit unions where you can call them for your credit. So TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. There's 1-800 numbers for you to call there, or toll-free numbers. They're not always 1-800 anymore, right? We're in the new year,
right.
Do we care about toll-free numbers anymore?
Sorry, we talked about phone freaking today. You just took me way back. Yes, tell me more.
I don't even care if it's toll-free anymore. They don't cost me anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, they publish numbers where you can get a hold of the three credit agencies. Get in there, tell them to freeze your credit. Put a fraud alert with them, because a fraud alert will last for a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that sets a higher level of security if anybody's applying for credit in your name. So this will help protect you against identity theft for your data that's already probably out there. It's tax season. Some of the info.
Ouch, sorry. I was
so one of the pieces, I mean, I'll tell you what was in the email that I got. Email, address, multiple phone numbers, my date of birth, my social security number. All the things you'd use to file your taxes.
Oh, wow.
So watch for that.
Okay.
File your taxes as soon as you can to make sure you don't have any fraud there. Because I don't know if you remember the stuff that happened with the unemployment fraud in 2020. COVID. I was in that too, right?
Yeah.
I teach for a local university, and I got a call from the HR department. It's like, did you file for unemployment? I was like, no, I'm pretty gainfully employed. And they were like, oh, crap. So you're one of those people. So I had to put a fraud alert, freeze credit, all the same sort of stuff. But so it makes it a little more difficult if you're buying a house or you're going to buy a car, get a loan, credit card, any of that sort of stuff. Because credit agencies, if that happens, will just you'll get a denied application and they won't tell you the reason.
Yeah.
So if you freeze your credit, put a fraud alert on it, you should probably let them know before you then go and do anything that's going to reference your credit. Even like insurance companies, job application, they check your credit, right? That sort of stuff. So you don't want any of that to reflect negatively. Make sure that gets all turned off and then turned back on once you get those transactions done.
Yeah.
File your taxes early. Pay attention to your medical bills because they have all this information that they said they published. But if they had access to the databases that have that stuff, they probably have access to things like that you might have gotten treated for, which could be insurance fraud, or they could get services in your name. So pay attention to your medical bills and make sure that they are correct.
Yeah, that was one thing we didn't talk about, but I was kind of like okay to get my medical like information, procedures, and I still like zoom back to like 8 years ago. I'm like, us going electronic and medical is the dumbest thing we should ever do. Easily compromised. It's gonna happen. Yeah. I know paper sucks and it's a burden and it's not fun and you got to fax it, but damn, like I know. Here we are.
I know. And I never let a chance like this go by without just saying, just general internet hygiene.
Yep.
Make sure your machines are patched, latest, whatever you're using. Like so many of us use phones. Please don't pay your bills on your phone. I mean, that's the worst device you could use to do that sort of stuff.
Don't click on random text messages.
Don't click on links in your emails from your phone. Any of that sort of stuff. Do that from a computer so you can see email headers. You can actually see the URLs, all that sort of stuff. Make sure that computer is secure. It's got the latest security patches. Make sure you've got a decent anti-malware product running on there. I mean, if you're running a Windows machine, make sure that Defender is turned on. It's provided to you for free from Microsoft, and it's not bad. It's not the best, but it's good.
It's better than nothing. It's good. Like
it's
it. Good. Yeah, I've seen it catch some stuff that
say that because it's a Microsoft product, but it's good. I mean, it's decent.
I feel you on that, but I feel like they were horrible, and then I was seeing them stop some stuff that the head EDRs weren't catching. I'm like, Defender.
I can't actually feel good
Sentinel.
I get
not sponsored by any of that, but hey, not bad. They're making it.
Those are the things to do, and then seriously, like go. I use Experian. This isn't an ad for them. That's one I've used. I get credit protection I've got a Discover card.
Yeah.
Discover provides me credit protection as a card member. American Express does the same.
Nice.
So I'm covered by like 3 different credit protection things because of like the credit instruments that I have, in addition to the fact that I just pay for Experian on my own. And avail yourself of any of those sorts of things because we're kind of at the point where we really just need to detect bad stuff when it happens. We're not in preventative mode anymore.
Yeah.
Prevention is out the door at this point with this alleged breach. We're in the point of just protecting yourself and making sure that we can detect something bad goes on before your identity gets stolen or your credit gets ruined.
Yeah, and that's kind of, as for a consumer level, I think that's pure gold for the public. Corporations, maybe a little different companies, but like I guess we were where the dollar stops. That's kind of what we have. So I guess kind of in closing, I think, again, appreciate you coming on, and I hope that everyone, immediately takes action. Don't wait for real. Like, you should really take action. This, again, I always go back, for me, I'm worried about my kids being compromised. Maybe not today, but like, I mean, they have it where they were born. Birthday.
It doesn't change either, right?
Right.
You don't change your Social Security number.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's out there, it's out there forever.
It could be 15 years before it happens. Yeah. And they're just kids now, or even it could happen now because there's a lot of kid fraud as well for their Social Security numbers. Take action, and that's kind of my 2 cents. And then, Chris, if you could close us out again, thank you for joining. But just any last 2 cents, and just anything else you want to say to the community.
I think really, if you've got somebody in your social circle that knows computers, ask them about this. Ask them, how to get to those resources. Don't try and do anything that email says if you got one, but go to somebody in your social circle, or I mean, if you want to, reach out to one of us.
Yeah.
I mean, we might be able to provide some links, at least to some legitimate resources that can help point you in the right direction for doing that sort of stuff. But most of the stuff that we've kind of talked about here, freezing your credit, putting a fraud alert, this is all stuff that you could do as a general consumer. It's not outside of it. It's going to take some time out of your day. It's going to make it a pain in the ass to get credit. If you take some of these steps, just note that. But it's the juice on this one is certainly worth the squeeze, I think.
Yeah. And then just to kind of hammer down again, if any company or anyone needs some help out there, Chris and I are very heavy in the community. We're here to help. That's why we do what we do, because we do like to help people. Reach out. Feel free to connect with us. And kind of wrapping up, we appreciate everyone joining us again for another Secure AF podcast. Again, my name is Donovan with guest Chris Yates. Thank you so much. Hell yeah, man. You guys have a great day. We'll see you later.